In this video, we're doing a follow-up from our last video, how much does it cost to build a custom home, and digging into foundations. Specifically, we're going to do a comparison to an insulated concrete form foundation to your conventional poured foundation. We're going to talk about some of the misconceptions. We'll share when and why we use ICF foundations, and we'll also do a basic cost comparison between the two. Now, both of these foundations have been around for quite some time now. Obviously, the conventional foundation has been around a lot longer than the ICF form. However, here's a brief history lesson. Concrete is a rough mixture of broken stone or gravel, sand, cement, and water that can be poured and spread into molds. In 1875, American mechanical engineer William Ward completed the first reinforced concrete home in the US, and it still stands today in Port Chester, New York. An insulated concrete form, or ICF for short, is a type of building material block made of polystyrene with a space in between to install rebar and pour concrete. ICF walls are vapor resistant, which means they do not need a vapor barrier, but they do need to be waterproof. Contractor Werner Gregory, a German-born naturalized Canadian, apparently was inspired by watching his kids playing on the beach at Algonquin Park and realizing the effectiveness of his EPS foam cooler at keeping his beer cold. He started wondering about the possibilities of ICF. ICF foundations are typically limited for custom homes. At least that's where you see them a lot of the time because they're too expensive for the high volume tract builders. You often don't see them in high-performance homes either, at least where we are, because the insulation levels that's required for a high-performance home is higher than what you get with your standard ICF form. A couple of the advantages of an ICF foundation is that the insulation is continuous. You have an effective R value that is much higher than what you would get in the same amount of space on a standard foundation. The other benefit is that the vapor barrier is built into it, and you also don't need to strip your forms. You just take off your braces, get rid of the planks, and you are done. It's all cleaned up. Here at The Conscious Builder, because of the high performance homes that we build, we often use ICF because of necessity as opposed to wanting to use them. When it comes to building a custom home, it's often hard to find a forming company that will want to do your home because they're too busy with all of the cookie cutter homes. And the price that they give you for your home might not make sense. So we fall back to ICF, where we can also subcontract it out, or we can do it in-house with our own carpenters. The Insulated Concrete Forms magazine shared a comparison they did last year. They used 2-pound closed cell spray foam, probably because it is comparable to the EPS on the insulation front of the ICF, but they are comparing different effective insulation values, so it does not paint the whole picture in my opinion. They concluded that the ICF wall is 14% cheaper when using the same wall and reinforcement and waterproofing membrane. In our experience, this has not been the case though. In our example, we're going to use a simple 30 by 30 foundation at 8 feet high, and we're just going to look at the wall portion of it because everything else would remain the same. We're also going to factor in the effective R value instead of just the nominal R value. So an effective R value of an ICF is typically around R22, and that means that we need a nominal R value of about R27 on our standard foundation in order to get the equivalent. So that means that we're going to be adding some continuous insulation on the inside of the foundation that we're doing for the standard option. And we chose to use Rockwool. We're going to use a superior product, so we chose to use 1.5 inches of Rockwool, which will actually give us R6, so we'll end up with R28, but it still gives you a good idea of something that would perform at the same level. The other thing that we're going to factor in is that typically a standard foundation is 8 inches thick. When you go to ICF, you can usually get away with a 6-inch core because that's reinforced with a lot more rebar, but it gives you a total of about 11 5/8 from outside to inside for your ICF foundation. So talk to your engineer about this, but we factored this into our calculations because we use about 25% less concrete than a standard form. The spreadsheet you're looking at is for materials only. So 20 MPa concrete is going for about $235 a cubic yard in our area right now. So the ICF option will have about $4,178 worth of concrete, and the standard foundation will have about $5,598 worth of concrete. The ICF materials will run about $8,179, and the materials to get the same R value for a standard foundation will be about $4,994. Now, as a reminder, we used rock wool insulation and Intello Plus for the vapor/air barrier, so technically you could get cheaper products if you wanted to, but I would not recommend this. In either case, this example shows that the ICF is about a 17% increase in price. Labor-wise, it gets a little trickier to do a cost comparison for, because yes, there is technically less work on the ICF option when it comes to framing and insulating because it's already done as part of the forming, but it takes significantly more time to form up the ICF to begin with. So if you were doing a cost comparison for your project, I'd recommend that you go out and get the quotes for the labor for both of the options, because it's really going to depend on time. As I already mentioned, some of the prices were quite high for us because the demand was high for forming companies, so we fell back onto ICF, and that's what we'll do if we have to, if the numbers make sense. Now, if you're only looking at nominal R value, the ICF is actually a 33% increase in price. This is because you could eliminate the R6 worth of Rockwool comfort board. This would not be an accurate comparison though, so be careful when you're running your numbers for your project. Now, as you can see, it's hard to do a direct cost comparison because of all the factors that are involved. In our experience, ICF typically comes out more expensive unless you're getting those high quotes from subtrades because they're too busy doing other projects. Now, if you were building your own home and you were going to provide the labor and you had the time to do that, well, then there would be quite a bit of cost savings in going the ICF route because you could eliminate or significantly reduce the labor cost for the project. Now, if ICF was always cheaper, then in my opinion, we would be seeing a lot more of it in the industry. You would see the big builders using it all the time, and that is just not the case yet. Now, if you're concerned about your carbon footprint, you could go with something like NextChem, which is an ICF, but they get rid of the EPS and they use a different material for the form. So you do lose R value and it does cost more, but once again, it depends on what the goals are for you and your project. You'll also want to look at the entire life cycle of your home. How long is your home going to be standing? Sometimes it makes sense to use products that might be higher in carbon off the get-go, but you have to look at how far down the road that works. So there are tools out there for you to calculate that if that is something that you are interested in. If you missed our last video, you can watch that here. And if you own a home and you live in the US, I have a great opportunity for you. I've teamed up with Apricot Solar and Freedom Forever in order to bring solar to your home and help you save thousands of dollars. There's never been a better time to go solar because of the incentives that you can get and because of the fact that solar has gone down by 50% over the last 10 years. If you're concerned about the upfront cost, don't worry. There's all sorts of financing opportunities that require literally $0, and you can actually be ahead every month and get further and further ahead every month with the options that we have. If you want to check it out and see if your home qualifies, you can head to theconsciousbuilder.com/solar, and I will get back to you if you fill out the short form there. Once again, that is theconsciousbuilder.com/solar. Until next time, I'm Casey Gray, and remember to live consciously.